Thanks for joining me on a look back at the life of Antonio Inoki. Very sad. Just a couple of short hours ago, I got the text from my friend telling me that he had passed away. It's kind of ironic. Just a couple of hours before he texted me, I sent him some pictures that I took of all the Enoki covers when he was the NWF champion in the 70s. I just was putting them all together tonight, just seeing how many there actually were, just because I was bored. And then lo and behold, here I am, and I get this text saying he passed away. I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. I said, well, now that all my magazines are torn apart, that I've been going through resetting up and reorganizing my room down here, and Antonio's stuff is already out, I have got to make a video for him for a memorial. You will never find anyone who loved the sport of professional wrestling as much as him. No one has done more for the sport of professional wrestling than he has. Giant Baba as well. They're both huge contributing factors for the success of pro wrestling in Japan today. I loved Inoki's approach to it. It was the strong style, which he was pushing, which was more martial art and striking oriented with professional wrestling, rather than the Giant Baba's All Japan, when he was more of a mat wrestler. There's nothing wrong with either one. It's just your preference. Some liked one, some liked the other, some loved both. It doesn't really matter. I preferred Inoki's only because I was originally drawn to him because he was in the WWF, and that's what I had grown up with, and that's when I had first seen him. There is the amount of magazines that I have. Here's a set over here that didn't make the cut, another 75, because there's just so many magazines with him on the cover. Not so much in America, but throughout Japan. The guy was an icon, a legend. He was on everything. So trying not to make a 4-hour video, I just picked out some of the high spots and best pieces of his career to point out, to do my best that I can to present him the way that he loved it, professional wrestling, strong style. And my earliest issues with him are in the around 64, I believe it was, or 65, but he wasn't dominant on the cover, so I'm going to show just dominant covers with Enoki, and this was like his first dominant cover, that at least that I have. I don't have all the 60s issues, I have most, but this is the most dominant that I have. He's going up against the Mad Russian, whoever that might be, under the mask. This was in Gong Invitation to the Ring, November 1969. And we will go through mostly Gong issues. I left a lot of the Monthly Pro issues out. Monthly Pro was more heavily, not more based or heavily based, but they kind of teetered to one side of All Japan's, and Gong kind of favored to the New Japan. But I really shouldn't say that because they both covered both, but if you went magazine cover for magazine cover, you would see that it was Gong really favored the New Japan in their articles and stuff. So I basically chose mostly all Gong issues to show you guys today. So early on, he held a bunch of titles. You can go everywhere and see anything you want to read about him. You'll know all about his different championships throughout his career. We're not really going to highlight that because they're not on the covers of those magazines. We're just going to discuss him, his history in the magazines and in programs. Another cover, early 1970, March, and he is on the cover of Gong Invitation to the Ring, November 1970, once again. So this is all before he's captured a world championship. The Giant Baba right now is the champion. They are in the same organization, the Japanese Wrestling Association, together at this point up until 1972 when they make this split. And that's where things will get a little bit more interesting and you'll have a little bit more of a story to tell about Inoki's career. But right now he's just, hitting some covers of the Gong issues early 1970, 71, 72, and just some basic covers that he happened to be on. Here he is against Bruno Sammartino. I explain, I think in the Bruno video that I made, about the friction that Bruno had with Enoki and Karl Gotch. I believe this is a singles match though. This is like the only time you will ever see these two grapple. There was a couple of tag teams before. This was the last because Bruno refused to do any work with Enoki when he went on his own and formed New Japan. Here is Enoki with the Dory Funk when he's battling for the NWA title. He was able to wrestle for all the championships, never winning any of them, but I'm talking about the WWF, NWA, AWA. This is issue number 1 for Monthly Pro, and this was the issue that I said I wasn't going to show many of. This issue is like I said, it's issue number 1. It's rather expensive. It's got the 3 world champions at the time in Japan. You got the Giant Baba, which is the NWA International World Heavyweight Champion. Strong Kobayashi was the IWA Japan Heavyweight Champion. And Sakaguchi is the NWA United National Heavyweight Champion. The United National Championship would eventually merge with Giant Baba's NWA International Heavyweight Championship later on. But this is a separate company, the IWA and Baba's company. So there's 2 companies basically that were dominant. Enoki decides to leave the Giant Baba and forms his own New Japan company. So now there will be 3, and that information is all in this issue here. So in 1972, Antonio Inoki leaves the Giant Baba, leaves the association, and starts on his own. He needs a championship with lineage, with proven back, rather than just say, okay, I am the New Japan company, and all of a sudden you're the New Japan champion. The champion came from nowhere. It was a company that just formed. The championship has no meaning. It has no lineage. So what he did was Karl Gotch was one of his trainers also throughout his younger career. Partnered up with Karl Gotch. Karl Gotch became the first New Japan heavyweight champion. The belt that he was wearing was the American Wrestling Alliance, the AWA heavyweight championship belt that Gotch was champion of, which was basically a catch wrestling championship belt. And that became the first championship belt in New Japan. In the fall of 1972, Enoki faced off against Karl Gotch, and Enoki wins the title. And here is Enoki with his first World Major Heavyweight Championship belt, which was Gotch's catch wrestling AWA World Belt. Don't know the particulars on the politics on what happened with this belt and Gotch, if they had a falling out. I don't know. Gotch won the title back not very long after, and Enoki decided to go in a different direction for his championship belt lineage. So we're in 1973. This is Gong, Invitation to the Ring. Enoki is still battling throughout the year without a championship until he would face Mr. Powers, who was the NWF World Heavyweight Champion. This was a Northeast America-based company, the NWF. Guys like Ernie Ladd, Abdul the Butcher, Dominic DeNucci, all held this title. Johnny Valentine. Powers goes to Japan and on a tour, and he would face Antonio Inoki in 1974. And here is Inoki winning the match with his notorious finishing abdominal stretch. This isn't the actual magazine from the event. This is a magazine that came out some years later, but it covers it in great detail with a lot of color. Here as bad as it looks, this cover, very reminiscent from the times of the 1970s, very looking cartoonish looking. But here is Enoki with the championship belt. It is in the February 2nd, 1974 issue of Monthly Pro, and this covers his victory over Powers for winning the NWF championship. Here is a huge poster. I'll try to fit it in here. Antonio Inoki goes to visit Ricky Dozan's grave with his championship belt. Sorry, I can't. I'm trying to get this without too much of a glare. He goes to visit Ricky Dozan with his championship belt, and it translates over here, 1974. NWF New World Champion Antonio Inoki, 7 years into his young career, now a world champion. And I just thought this was a great looking poster and had to have that one for sure. Here now is Inoki's first magazine cover as world champion, and here he is posed on the cover of Gong in May of 1974. Great looking cover, a great looking belt shot there. Here is a little bit of coverage from it through the American publications, and Wrestling Monthly had it, and this was in December of 1974's issue. It's actually a match between Enoki and Gotch, but it's not. But no one was any of the wiser. And the bottom states that NWF ruler Enoki, true champion of the 70s, and there's a cover inside center story of him and the different champions from the NWF previously, before Enoki had bought the rights to it. So 1974 was a big year for New Japan. Like I said, he would win the world title, and New Japan would also start their own world tournament. And this magazine, Gong, June of 1974, would have the first World League tournament champion, and it would be Antonio Inoki winning the World League tournament. Maybe not heard of the World League tournament. Just a real quick history on it. The World League started in 74. This was the issue that first brought it to light. That would change a few years later to the MSG tournament, taking after Madison Square Garden's name. I'll explain that to you later, why it's called MSG. MSG would eventually turn to the IWGP tournament, which I'm sure many of you heard of, the IWGP, which is still active today. Once the IWGP became a world title that was no longer defended in a tournament, the IWGP title moved separate, and the tournament changed to the name of the G1 Climax. And the G1 Climax is actually going on right now in Japan. So it's still going on today in 2022. So 1974 was the first World League Championship. Antonio Inoki was the first champion. He won the first 2 years. Sakaguchi won the next 2 years after that. It's interesting to see. You can see their relationship's going to start very early. I'll just go to the page inside. You'll see Vince McMahon Sr. with his wife at ringside to watch Inoki win the tournament at the finals. Here's just some black and white photos. And here is Inoki finishing some of the matches at the end. And then here is Vince McMahon Sr. Sorry about that. Vince McMahon Sr. In the locker room, toasting with all the other wrestlers, sitting with Inoki. So they were forming their friendship for big things to come with Inoki that would made his relationships broaden to the New York area. And I thought it was pretty cool to see Vince McMahon there with his wife. This magazine of June of 74 covers the more in-depth information about the tournament and all the competitors that are in the tournament. Moving on, we have into 1975 now. This is the January issue, and it's just talking about the Giant Baba's win over Jack Briscoe for the NWA title, and Inoki is the king of New Japan. What will be coming up in the following year. 75 would actually be a pretty good year also. Here is just an issue with Enoki taking on Strong Kobayashi, who we've seen earlier was the IWA World Champion. The IWA would close down shortly after, and Strong Kobayashi would join up with Enoki in New Japan as well. This is a big commemorative book that came out in 1975. It's got a lot of great early photos. My friend in Japan, I've never even seen one of these before. He had contacted me and says, you don't have one of these, do you? And I says, no. He says, you have to have it. You'll love it. And I was like, well, what is it? He goes, oh, it's a big book and it's got everything in it. And I was like, all right, I'll take it. What the hell? I didn't realize it was as expensive as it was, but I'm really glad that I sprung and bought it. There's some great older photos in here of Enoki, a lot of full color shots, but here he is when he was a rookie. There's some pictures in here when he was just training under Ricky Dozan. Here he is tying Ricky Dozan's shoes, or actually taking his shoes off, it seems, in the locker room area. And here he is stretching him out and doing some training, also training some judo and jiu-jitsu, and rubbing him down after the match. A lot of young personal pics in here. There was a match when he first came to America when he was partnered with Hiro Matsuda, and he won his first championship. I was just trying to find that photo if I can. But of course, no, I can't find it. Give me a sec. I'm sure it'll turn up here. Here it is. He comes to Florida, and it's Florida territory, and he would win his first championship on the road in the late 60s, it doesn't say the date, I don't think. I'm sorry, yeah, 65. He would take the Florida championship on his tour here with Hiro Matsuda. So this was a really good book, a really rare book, hard book to find. It's his beginning of his career in like 65 and until 75. So it covers like his first 10 years or so of him wrestling. So throughout the years, he would, continue to be on the magazine covers, and here he is on the cover of Gong in June of 75. Now he is established as a world champion. The IWA is still around. It's on its way out right now, but it's still active. The three major companies, NWF, which is New Japan, the IWA, and the Giant Baba's All Japan. At the time, the Baba now is the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. So they're showing the three big guns in Japan. Kind of like you would see AWA, NWA, and WWF on a cover of one of our magazines. Enoki would have a surprising loss. He would only lose that belt twice. Once to Tiger Jeet Singh right here, and once to Stan Hansen in 1980. But throughout his career, he would be pretty much dominant without just those two losses. This is a rare shot of Tiger Jeet Singh. He would held the belt not very long, several months or so. Here's another shot on Gong Invitation to the Ring with a bloody Tiger Jeet Singh and Enoki vowing to get that belt back, and he certainly will get the belt back, and he would take on, this is a huge program, a stamped program. Stamped means this is like a basic program, and they would do maybe a 2-month, 3-month tour of a certain series. What I mean by series, this is called the token series. So the token series could run from, say, January through April, and they would have one main program for every arena that this tour was going to go on. And the night of the event, they would stamp inside with a rubber stamp the names of the wrestlers who was going to wrestle that night. So, like I'm saying, if this is stamped, it's worth more money because it's you actually went to the event and bought it and had the program, and it's complete with the lineup. This night in October 9th, 1975, Antonio Inoki's defending the NWF title against Luthez. Here is Enoki once again on a cover of Gong, and he's defending the title against Billy Robinson. Now things start to get a little interesting. He wants to branch out a little bit, take on all comers, and believes that Professional wrestlers should be the greatest fighters in the world, and he wants to prove that. He would first try to prove that against judoka or judo practitioner William Rooster, and he would defend that title in 1976. The coverage of that match is inside of this issue. There's several issues that cover it, but this kind of covers it pretty good. The next issue would cover it just a little bit better. This was like the build up to the match with Ruska, but nevertheless, he faces the judo champion and defeats the judo champion soundly. A few months down the road, he would put out a challenge to Muhammad Ali. Everyone kind of knows the story on the Ali Enoki match, if you want to call it that. Some say it was terrible, some say it was great. Be that what it may, it was real. It was style versus style. It was the beginning of mixed martial arts, if you will. No one's ever done anything like that before. Challenge somebody else in a different art, and wrestler versus boxer, wrestler versus karate guy. This never happened in the ring on a scale like this. And Antonio Inoki was the first person to drop these challenges and do it, and actually succeed. So this would be the first issue talking about Inoki and him training for the Ali fight. There's pictures of him training, there's pictures of Ali training. All the hype, I should say, I guess, is in this July issue of Gong 1976. Now, of course, the issues are backdated, so the actual match itself, this was the program to that event on June 25th, and this was the Shea Stadium program for the night. Stan Hansen went against Bruno Sammartino in the comeback match, and this, of course, was on the simulcast and not much coverage for it in the American issues. The After Mags had one magazine covering it, and it had Bruno on the cover with Hansen. That was the dominant part of the magazine. I really didn't feel like it was worth showing, honestly. The Wrestling Review touches on it a little bit better than the wrestler did. But who is the king of the ring, Ali or Enoki? Find out inside. It has the story of the match. Also, Wrestling Monthly, also November of 1976, has the special report for Enoki and Ali. And another huge program here. This is a token series, 1976, and it's got Andre the Giant versus Antonio Inoki. This is another huge stamped program for this tour. This particular night was October 2nd, 1976. Andre had some huge battles with Inoki in the early 70s. They fought all over the place and really tore the house down when they got together. Andre was a heel there, obviously, and he was, a monster for sure. Wrestling Monthly picks up a little bit of it. You can see in the black and white corner here, Andre versus Inoki. Other than that, our magazines really didn't pick much up on it. They didn't really discuss it all that much. Here is the 300th issue of Monthly Pro, and it's got the two champions, the NWF and All Japan, Giant Baba squaring off. Obviously, it's Photoshop. They're not together. They haven't been together for quite some time since the departure, and this is in May's issue of 1977. It's an expensive issue if you can find it. It's the 300th issue. They have all the back issues inside the magazine showing all the old covers. It's a pretty cool looking commemorative issue. So this has Backlund versus Enoki, title versus title in this issue. It's also got the U.S. Pro Karate Super Heavyweight Championship bout when Enoki fought Monster Man. That was his name, Monster Man. Big black guy, jacked up, and kickboxer and karate guy. The fight, I'm not sure if it's on YouTube or not. I know it was. You can watch it and judge for yourself. It was, kind of like the Renzo Gracie Enoki match that took place in the year 2000, but Inoki was like pushing 60 then, and Gracie was in his prime of MMA fighting. But it was more like that, more of like a very hard demonstration, I guess, if you want to call it that. If I don't know, it was subject. I'm not sure. I'm not saying all these fights were legit. But what it's doing is it's giving the publicity, and it's drawing eyes to it. Some people will bring in Andy Kaufman, but this guy will bring in kickboxing champions for his publicity. So I guess to each their own. At least it was done in a little more realistic manner that way. But this has all the coverage of when he fought the karate kickboxing champion in this issue of July 1978 of Gong. It also has the coverage of Backlund and Enoki. They would have a bunch of battles. Enoki would win the WWF title in 1979. We'll get to that in a couple of minutes, but it wasn't in this particular issue. Here is a Gong issue. Nature Boy Buddy Rogers on the cover coming out. He's getting ready to face Ric Flair at this point. But we are looking at Enoki versus Andre once again. That's a feud that would carry on all the way through the mid 80s as well, and it would start in the very early 70s. Some really good coverage of these two battling it out. A couple of them were super bloody matches too. This is another cover. Enoki with now the World League tournament is no more. It is now called the MSG tournament. Basically, the name changed from the World League to the MSG. Enoki came to Madison Square Garden to wrestle. He said he loved the energy there. He's never seen anything like it. The excitement, the fans, the hype, the theater, the whole experience. He wanted to capture all of that and bring that to Japan. And so he called his tournament the Madison Square Garden Tournament. Whatever, that's just what the name of the tournament was. And I believe this is now the second. 1978, yeah, I think it came in 77 first. So this may be in the second tournament here, and this is just him on the cover competing in the tournament. Here is a program from the Big Fight series, a little bit different from the other programs that we've seen. Now Antonio Inoki is the WWF Martial Arts Heavyweight Champion of the world, and there is his martial art belt he is wearing there. This program took place April 5th, 1979, and he would battle his old foe, Tiger Jeet Singh. Not since 1972 has Enoki and Baba been together again, and here they are in one of the biggest things that ever hit Japan, the joining of these two to rid the world of the scum, as it says in the magazine, the scum of Abdullah the Butcher and Tiger Jeet Singh. Nobody could get rid of them. They were destroying everybody, and it took Enoki and Baba to join forces to get rid of them. This is a very expensive program / magazine. If you find one, you get ready to break out a couple $100 for it. It's just because it's got these two back together again, and here they are inside battling it out with Abdullah and Tiger Jeet. So all the coverage is in this All-Star Dream bout, which it was called. But yeah, very expensive, very huge event that took place in Japan, and very difficult to find that sucker. So we are still in 1979. Okay, this is a commemorative look back at Inoki's fights. Antonio Inoki, the greatest fighter in the world, and he's up here with Ali, where he hospitalized Ali from all those leg kicks. Here he is with the Monster Man, with Ruska on the bottom, and a kickboxer here in the corner, showing he takes on any style, any fighter, anywhere, and that challenge is still valid today and is ready to take on anyone to prove he's the best. Here is a rare shot of Antonio Inoki on the cover. of a Madison Square Garden program for December 29th, 1980. And let me see if it shows who he's wrestling. He's taking on Bobby Duncombe. But here's the rare part of this is he's showing his championship belt on the cover, which is great. Usually they didn't do that. I mean, they did it for a few guys like Chavo Guerrero and a couple, but not many. Freddie Blassie, they did it, but not many guys go on the cover of a Garden program with their belt. This is a Pro Wrestling Monthly issue. Bob Backlund is facing Dusty Rhodes in this issue, which was a classic match. And Enoki is here winning the next Madison Square Garden 3 series tournaments. Of course, he wins them all. He's the greatest, right? This is similar to the other magazine. It's a different pose. Their arms are in a different position. This is a commemorative magazine that came out some years in the 80s. It's covering the Backlund and the Enoki match. A lot more photos, a little more articles involved, and there's some good coverage of the Backlund and Enoki war that they had for the 2 years they were in Japan together. But Enoki would battle him in 1979, Backlund that is, and he would win the WWF Championship belt. And some people say, no, he didn't. And some people say, yes, he did. It doesn't really matter what you say because he did. It was a clean pinfall. He pinned him in the center of the ring. He won the belt. Backlund did not win the belt back. It was surrendered. There's many different rumors on why it was surrendered and why it went that way. I really don't know why, so I'm not going to say. All I know is I have the video and I've seen, Backlund get pinned. And Enoki with the strap. He held it for a little over a week or so. This does not have any of the coverage whatsoever in this magazine, is my point. If you're thinking of getting this for that match, they don't even mention these two in here. They're just on the cover. It would take Wrestling Wonders from 1981 that has all the information in the article that when Enoki pinned Backlund for the belt. It says it on the bottom, Backlund versus Enoki, Battle of Champions. The back cover is Dusty Rhodes is on the back. If you can find one of these, it's very hard to find. They're very expensive if you can find them. They weren't around for very long. Their Japanese reporter was there, and they have actual photos of the night, and the article is in this issue. It's basically an underground, cheaply made magazine / dirt sheet / program, if you want to call it that. They would report things that other people and other companies didn't report, so most of the information's here. In America, it was all kept pretty silent, but here is Enoki on the cover of, what is this show? The New Year Golden Series, February 2nd, 1980, and this has got the Dynamite Kid versus Fujinami, and Enoki versus Stan Hansen, and that's him with the WWF Heavyweight Championship belt. And I've showed this once before, I'll show it again. Here is a poster of Enoki with the belt. That's a trifold magazine poster that's inside one of the issues of Gong. That's him after winning the title. So yes, he did win it, and yes, he was the champion. The WWF, for stupid political reasons, doesn't want to recognize it. And then all of a sudden, when they wanted to buy New Japan's library several years ago, they listed him as one of the WWF champions. And then when the deal fell through, when they didn't get the library, kind of funny how they no longer recognize him as the champion. But you know what they say. So continuing on, Backlund would get the title back. It would be given back to him in December '79, Madison Square Garden. He would come to the ring without the belt. It was handed to him. He was announced not as the champion. He was just announced as Bob Backlund when the ring announcer brought him to the ring. He faced Bobby Duncombe, and at the end, they announced him as the champion. So moving forward in 1980, one of a few of our issues in America that put Enoki on the cover of Wrestling Today 1980 when he's facing the Iron Sheik. Enoki in 81, February, and here he is on the cover of Madison Square Garden once again, decked out in the samurai garb. wasn't going to show this, but I thought it was funny. A lot of people think, Iron Mike Sharpe was just a bum. You may not remember, you may forget, or you may not have ever known. When Iron Mike Sharpe first came to the WWF, he was a heel. He won all of his matches. He had a title run against Backlund, and he was managed by Captain Lou Albano. Here he is on the cover of this issue against Enoki. I just thought it was, quite different, and I thought I would just show this for the heck of it, just to give Mike Sharpe a little bit of a plug that he kind of deserves. A lot of people just seen him as a job guy, and that wasn't really the case all the time. Even down south, in the Carolinas, he won a bunch of matches. So the MSG tournament would now come to an end. It would change once again, and it would be called the IWGP, International Wrestling Grand Prix, and they would crown its first tournament champion. And shockingly, it wasn't Antonio Inoki, it was Hulk Hogan in 1983. This is pre-WWF Hulk Hogan. And here is a rare shot of him on the cover with the gold belt. No one knew what this was. At the time, this is only a trophy belt. It wasn't a defended title. When you won the trophy at the end, it wasn't an actual trophy, it was a belt. That's the only difference. So he didn't have to defend it until the following year. For winning the tournament, you got a free pass in the next year's tournament. You don't have to compete in it. You just have to compete against the winner who made it to the finals. And the winner of that bout would become the new champion or the continued champion. So Hulk Hogan won the 1983 tournament, and he became the first tournament champion. In 1984, Enoki won the tournament. He made it to the end. He faced Hogan in the finals. Like I said, Hogan didn't have to compete until that final match, and Hogan lost, and Enoki is now the first time IWGP tournament champion in 1984. There's a million magazines with these two guys. This is just one of them from 1984. It's a Gong issue. It's why I'm showing it. And 5/31/94. I'm sorry, 84, and it's Enoki and Hogan. This is an invitation to the ring with Hogan and Enoki in the ring together. Actually, this was one I didn't mean to show. It's nothing special. It's just talking about the two champions in 1984. Okay, so that gets us to IWGP 1985. Hogan now is, we all know about Hulkamania, and he's running wild through the WWF. He was no longer competing in Japan, and in the tournament rather. And Enoki is now the champion. They decide to have the rubber match. They said, okay, Enoki won one, Hogan won one. Now at the end of this tournament, Enoki had just beaten Andre the Giant to become the champion. They decided to have a match several days later, and it was WWF versus IWGP, champion versus champion, and Enoki would beat Hogan for the rubber match. Here is Enoki getting the victory. Hogan's belt was not on the line. It was just a match for the two champions to see who would come out on top. And Enoki, so here is Enoki against Andre, and he would beat Andre just, I think it was less than a week. I have the ticket stubs over there. I should have brought them over. It was less than a week after he faced Hogan, and then, of course, he gets crowned the champion. This is the cover of Gong Weekly 1985, 7, which is July. This is another shot of him for the same tournament, and him getting the belt strapped around his waist. So this was when he beat Andre, and the belt winner. These came out weekly, these issues. So the news happened fast. So this was the week before when he beat Andre, and the week after when he beat Hogan. This is the coverage in that issue. I kind of had the issues reversed order there. So 1986, Hogan is no longer with anything to do with New Japan, and everything now is pretty much, the IWGP is starting to grow. It's catching on. It's becoming huge. People from all over are entering the tournament. 1986, Antonio Inoki enters the tournament once again and wins the championship once again. here. I didn't. There's another shot of Enoki on the cover in '86. I didn't mean to show that one either. 1987, wouldn't you know, another tournament takes place and Enoki wins it once again. The only difference now with 1987 is it is no longer just a tournament championship. He will put aside the NWF World Heavyweight Championship, and now we are using the IWGP Heavyweight Championship as New Japan's belt and their defended title from this point on. The NWF would come back maybe 10 years later, probably almost 20 years later, but that's another video that I made that I discuss all that information. But for now, 1987, Antonio Inoki is carrying the throne, and he is defending it all comers every single day of the week, anyone who wants to challenge for that belt. Here he would take on, I went ahead a little bit from 1987. I'm going to backtrack it because I just wanted to keep all the IWGP stuff together in one section. In 1985, it was huge news to get Bruiser Brody to jump ship from All Japan to New Japan and have these two battle it out. Bruiser Brody versus Antonio Inoki. I go into some pretty deep detail on how this came about in the Bruiser Brody video, so check that out if you want a little more information on that. And the next couple of issues are just the first time these two meet up in 1985. More of the same on the same coverage for Weekly Pro. And actually, this was in a little bit different order. Actually, no, this would be another tournament from 1988. I left off in 87. In 1988, they decided to have another tournament, and Antonio Inoki threw down the title. And this was be our first appearance of Van Vader, and Fujinami now was going to take the throne as ace of New Japan. Ace is just a term that they use for their top guy, so they call them aces for whatever reason. So this was going to be Fujinami's time to shine. I believe it was either Enoki left the tournament for a broken foot or a foot injury that needed surgery, something where I don't know if it was kayfabe or not, I'm not sure, but he backed out of the tournament, and it would be Fujinami's time to take the reins. This was the classic 1 hour battle. Fujinami is the IWGP champion, and he faces Enoki, teacher versus student, friend versus friend for the world title. It would go in Fujinami's favor after a very long battle. It's a classic television battle that's still talked about today, one of the longest battles for that belt, and all that coverage is in this issue of Weekly Pro in the 23rd of August, 1988. And we're just going to skip a lot of different, because there were so many other things going on, and Enoki kind of slowed down. Like I said, he passed the torch to Fujinami and let the other guys run with it. You'd have guys like Fujinami and Choshu, and the Great Muta was in the wings waiting to come up. Hashimoto was also in the wings coming up. So they were going to be like the new aces of the company. Antonio Inoki was getting older, and he kind of wrestled here and there and sat the sidelines for a little bit and came in and out. But the next big event for him was in 1996, when he would compete in Wrestling World 1986 at the Tokyo Dome versus Van Vader. And this was huge, and this is almost as big as this giant program from the event. I'm trying to get it all in here for you. So he would go on and face Antonio Inoki. Vader would be, and it was a huge bout, and he would have one other big match, and that would be against Don Frye in 1998. Don Frye, of course, was the Ultimate Fighting champion. He was a Pride fighting competitor. He was also a New Japan wrestler. After that bout, he retired, and that was his last match. They did put out a couple of commemorative issues for Enoki here. This is commemorative issue number 1, shortly when he retired, and this is covering all his fights against the powers, to Ruska, to Muhammad Ali, to Monster Man, and all the guys in between, Backlund and who we have. I'm just trying to. The list goes on with so many different guys that are in here. I just can't think of every one of them at this moment. But it's a good commemorative issue. If you can pretty much sum up every magazine that I showed you in the next 2 commemorative issues. This has nothing to really do with Enoki. This is just a 30-year anniversary from New Japan at the Tokyo Dome, and this is on New Japan Magazine. I just thought it was cool how they took all the wrestlers' faces and made Enoki's face out of the photos. So every one of these really close up is a wrestler's face inside the little square. They were former magazine covers, program covers, and just straight photos from the wrestlers that had made the 30-year commemorative program. I thought that was just pretty cool, so I thought I'd show it. And then the most recent to come out was this commemorative issue of Enoki with his classic look of the NWF World Championship. And it's just a beautiful black background. I have this actually displayed out in the front because I just thought this was a great looking magazine / book. So there it is, guys. That's just a look back on one of the greatest to come out of Japan. Somebody who's done so much for the sport of professional wrestling. Somebody who never treated it stupid. He never treated it like a cartoon. He always respected it. Antonio Inoki had the true Bushido spirit or warrior spirit. He was without a doubt a modern day samurai. A guy, like I said, he had black belts in jiu-jitsu and judo and karate, and he was a professional wrestling champion. He didn't need to study Brazilian jiu-jitsu at 60 years old and compete against Renzo Gracie. The guy could have just sat it, but that's just the warrior in him. He loved it. He seen it was an art that he wanted to study and practice, and he went with the Gracies and trained. And of course, he would never be able to compete, but you got to give it to a guy who just loves it so much, who can just have that warrior never die spirit. Sad to say, he moved on to another life, and his name will definitely live on forever. And rest in peace, Mr. Antonio Inoki. And thanks for joining me, guys, and we'll see you on the next.